Hi everyone. So we're going to talk mainly about the Be and Do project, which was is headed by Studio Free Arts, and me and Matty are the artists that have been brought on to run the project. We'll talk more about Be and Do later, but it's probably helpful to know a little bit about me and Matty before we go into talking all about Be and Do and what that is. So I'll just introduce myself first. So I'm Grace. I grew up in Barking, so the area that Studio Free Arts are based. I grew up in Barking and Dagenham, and I am a queer artist. So a lot of my work in recent years kind of intersects with my queerness, and just looking at how me being a part of the LGBT plus community can be involved in some of the work I make. So I mainly work in theatre, so that's kind of my area, but also I do a lot of like community artwork. So I also do a lot of projects that work with community groups. That's a lot of like facilitation and workshops and just getting creative, basically. So I grew up in Barking and Dagenham, and I guess one of the important things to say is that Be and Do is a group for the LGBT community in Barking and Dagenham. That is key. Barking and Dagenham really hasn't had a lot of provision for its queer community over the years. When I was growing up, it really wasn't, like, the queer community wasn't very visible, and still has quite low visibility compared to other boroughs in London. And that's something that me and Matty have kind of, when we first met, always spoke about, that kind of that was missing. It felt like I've always left Barking to find my community, and I've always gone off to Soho or wherever and try and found it elsewhere, because for me Barking and Dagenham didn't seem like a place where I could be openly queer in that sense. There's obviously different things that come into that, and still there is parts of Barking and Dagenham and people in Barking and Dagenham that unfortunately do not agree with LGBT rights, and it does make parts of it unsafe, and all of those sorts of things. So that's kind of who I am. And yeah, Matty, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi everyone, I'm Matty May. My pronouns that I use are he or they, which means that I'm comfortable with either of those, and they're both sort of fine for me. So I'll tell you a bit like what Grace did. I'll tell you a bit about who I am, and why I sort of work on Be and Do, and yeah, the work that I do. So I identify as a working class queer artist. My practice is focused in kind of theatre, so making work. I have written a solo show about my own experiences, so it's autobiographical. So that sort of talks a lot about growing up queer in a working class environment, and particularly Barking and Dagenham, because that's where I'm from. So I've focused on that a lot. I also, like Grace, do different engagement work with communities and different stuff like that. In a previous life, I was more focused in the charity sector. So I spent quite a few years working for an anti-bullying charity, which was, I did a lot of work in schools around bullying and prejudice, diversity and celebration of that kind of stuff, racism, homophobia, but also a lot around online safety. So I did a lot of, it's probably started around 8-9 years ago. So I did a lot around like the new social media, how parents could keep young people safe online, and then also like the way technology has impacted young people's lives. So talking a lot about sexting, young people being preyed on, vulnerable young people, all that different kinds of stuff, and that's kind of brought me to where I'm at now. My queer identity is very important to me. I always want it to be one of the key things that I'm working on and that I'm talking about. Not because it's the only thing I want to talk about or make work about. There's lots of other stuff I'm really interested in as well. But for me, it's a really important part of that. So I'm 31. So I grew up in Barking and Dagenham and went to school under Section 28. So I think one of the reasons I'm really passionate about Be and Do and the wider conversation is because I have had a lot of various negative experiences within this borough linked to who I am. You know, so that was over that I experienced bullying at school because of it. I've also I've experienced hate crime. That has been a physical assault, and also, you know, lower level stuff in terms of you know, people shouting things in the street, that kind of those kind of microaggressions. Well, actually that's not that micro, but other microaggressions along with that. So for me, this is a really exciting opportunity to be part of helping to develop a stronger visibility for the community within the borough, because obviously Barking and Dagenham is full of brilliant, lovely, wonderful people, and there are obviously lots of queer people, LGBTQ people who live in the borough, but it's about how that isn't a particularly visible aspect of the life, the day-to-day life within the borough. So we wanted to change that. Yeah, so that's a bit about me and why I work on the project, and I'll just take us straight into telling you a bit about Be and Do. So it is the council sort of originally put out this pot of money to make something happen. So it was quite a broad idea about, they just wanted something. I think they are in a position of understanding that actually the community isn't necessarily always represented within the borough, and they know that that's something that needs to happen more. So as Grace said, Studio Free Arts as an organisation, and then Grace and I sort of share the role of lead artist and collaborate. You know, we all collaborate on this Be and Do project, and we were like, what do we think we can do that will have a really positive impact on the borough, kind of bringing our experience as artists and as organisation that does lots of work in the borough, and also the experience of having lived, you know, the lived experience of being queer in the borough and what that kind of looks like. So the idea of it is it's about creating a safe space and a safe environment for the LGBTQIA plus community. So some aspects of the project are directly for people who identify within that group. That isn't about kind of dismissing people or kind of saying you can't be part of this. What it is saying is that as a community who often experience negative behaviors and feel the impact of that, it's important to have a space where you feel like you can be completely yourself within that space of people, like, you know, people that are also within that umbrella sort of queer term, and we believe that's really important. But along with that aspect of the project, there is also wider activity that is for everyone in the borough. So it's kind of two strands. There's the stuff that's directly for the community, and then we felt there needed to be wider stuff that is actually pushing forward that conversation within the borough. Obviously, it's been quite an interesting time to be trying to do that, because we literally launched the month before we went into lockdown. So I think Grace is going to give you a bit more of an overview of what we've been up to so far.
Yeah, so we launched in February 2020, which was, as we all know, a time when hope was there. We didn't know what was to come. We were living life, hugging each other, doing all sorts. But yeah, so we launched in February at like a spoken word event called Spoken Not Stirred, which is, some of you, if you were here yesterday, Studio Free Arts probably spoke about that. So that's a Studio Free Arts spoken word night. And we combined Be and Do combined with that night to launch Be and Do. It was really great. It was really brilliant. And then obviously COVID came along and slightly got in the way. When, as a like community group and starting up fresh, it's quite hard to build a group through lockdown. So we had a couple of months where we didn't put pressure on that, because also the world was trying to figure out what it needed, and also coming together as an online group felt maybe it would have been a bit disjointed. So we kind of left that in the air. But what we did do is in the summer. Obviously, Pride didn't happen in the same way it usually does. So the council gave us a little pot of money to be able to run something for Pride. So me and Matty and Liza, the artistic director of Studio Free Arts, kind of got our brains together and decided to kind of curate a queer, like 4 nights of queer cabaret that would kind of be put out online. So we got in touch with lots of local artists, a couple of artists who kind of play in the borough as well, so who weren't from the borough but kind of have kind of passed through the borough in different ways, had a connection to the borough in some way, and we kind of curated this night, these 4 nights of different events. So I think it'll be really helpful. We're going to show you one of the poems from that night. So Tanaka is a spoken word artist. He is absolutely brilliant, and he is from kind of the Romford area, so not Barking Dagenham, but does play in and around Romford, and he's brilliant. So I'm going to just share you one of his poems that he did for the Queer Cabaret, so you can kind of see what it was, and then I'll carry on chatting. So let me do this brilliant thing of sharing my screen.
In this poem, I am not colonized. This smile is not as sweet as molasses. These bones are not for consumption like plantain or plantain. This hair is not cotton. Not easy for the pickings within my white lover's fingertips in this poem. I'm just a masculine energy within a vessel I did not get to choose. I am my mother's son, and in this poem she agrees I am crop top summers, hood winters, any honey, lemon, ginger, and garlic cold remedy, the type when I was 10. My mother would stew over in this poem. I am rice and oxtail stew, wholesome, and the perfect antidote for any bad day. In this poem, there are still bad days, but within them I am not a commodity, not queer collateral damage by the hands of government. In this poem, I know my father, like know him. Know his favorite color, his favorite song, know how he felt seeing my mother down the aisle for the very first time. In this poem, I hear the words, I love you, and my hands loosen the grip of the noose around my neck. Meaning, in this poem, on days when I feel that God is letting me slip through his fingertips, it is not because I'm slipping in a pool of my own blood, but more so, floating in a bed of my mother's tears, meaning that in this poem, my mother's love is my savior, not the reason for my demise. That poem was called A Decolonization of a Queer Carcass. The next piece I'll be sharing is called Therapy. T, time wasted. H, hatred for this body. E, empathetic therapist. R, release from relief, but it just feels like reliving trauma from me. A, it feels as if I'm standing at a baggage claim, not sure which luggage of pain belongs to me. P, peace of mind. Why? For why do you do what you do and my mouth goes dry from the rum I just took a swig of before I can find an articulate way just to say, I'm just not happy these days. Therapy, a treatment intended to relieve or heal a disorder. Barbershop, a synonym, a place to get your hair cut and talk to older men about your problems, and if you go to a good one, where the uncle's laughter can become the antidepressants you never knew you needed, you can end up leaving healed. Where I'm from, we don't know about a clinic or a 6 to 12 month waiting time. All we know is a chair and some clippers and a 20-minute to 4-hour waiting time where supermalt laced tongues fight over who in the next World Cup. Where I'm from, we don't know about a man sitting opposite us in a chair. We don't know about doctor's notes and coping mechanisms. All we know is a man with a gold tooth in his smile, with the steadiest of hands, with a brush to form waves to wash the pain away. Where I'm from, folks don't believe in a white Jesus. Mothers don't pay a man to tell them what's wrong. Fathers find religion in the bottle. Mothers find home in a pastor, and sons find hope in a barbershop. Think every fresh trim the pot of gold under every rainbow. Think shame being trimmed off along with your high top from being a boy into becoming a man. Therapy, a treatment intended to relieve or heal a disorder. Barbershop. Some would say is a synonym. And if that's the case, then I guess I've been going to therapy my whole life. Thank you. That poem was called Therapy. This next piece is called Body Conversation. If my body could speak, I think it would sound like my mother. Full of disappointment with a pinch of hope, holding on to some faint idea that I might be able to love myself again. If my body could speak, I think it would sound like my brother. Full of resentment and pain, you not have a clue on how to express it, so I think it would yell if my body could speak. I think it would say things only my father could hold in his arsenal. Expecting everything after barely doing anything if my body could speak. I think it would give me the silent treatment. Just like my sister. Because if you haven't got anything nice to say, then you shouldn't say anything at all. Fun fact. When I was 9, every night I would pray for this body to instantaneously combust. To start a fire in my mother's home, making her finally realize I've been burning alive this whole time. But I guess God didn't even think these bones were worthy of being dry wood yesterday. I thought to myself, if I could have a healthy dialogue with this body, I wouldn't even know where to start. But I guess I would mumble an attempt at I'm sorry for binding and bruising these ribs, for not thinking it was worth a glance in the mirror. I'd apologize for every dirty glance I've given it. In the mirror, I would grovel at the shrine which is this vessel, make jewels out of all the tears and slurs I've spewed at it, being a living testimony that a flower can bloom even in a dark room. I would hope and even pray that this body would accept the apology, grace me with a smile, and maybe just say that it loves me still. That poem was called Body Conversation.
All right. Thank you so much for watching that. I think Tanaka is a really great example of why we did the Queer Cabaret, in the sense of being a local artist who's a part of the LGBT plus community, whose work is just like so brilliant, and it's really nice to have the chance to be able to share that out with everyone. And that's kind of an event we did for everyone, so it was welcome to all. And then we just came back after the summer and decided it's time to get back into finding that safe space and that group that we can come together that's a bit more for the community. And we meet monthly, that group of people, and we've met now 6 times, I think. And as we've met every month, the group's really starting to grow, and we're really starting to have some really like nice open conversations. There's kind of no pressure on those meetings. We don't really do, I say we don't do anything. We do stuff, but we kind of don't put pressure on having to have a really big outcome of those sessions. It's all just about having a space to socialize and be ourselves and have a chat. Obviously last month in January, we were talking about this month because it's LGBT History Month. So we started talking about people in our lives that have inspired us from the community and all of that sort of stuff. And those conversations have just been really nice. So the group's really growing. We obviously, because of coronavirus, it hasn't grown in the same way we thought maybe it would have by now. But I think that actually we're really starting to find a flow of the group. So we're kind of just wanting to get the word out there about the project and stuff like that and get a bit more going. So that kind of puts us on to LGBT History Month, where actually we've been doing quite a lot compared to what we usually do monthly. So Matty, do you want to talk about all the stuff we've got?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, just go like add on to a point then, which is that I think it's really good to be open in discussion about stuff like this, is that when you're establishing a group like this, so when you're establishing a group for the LGBT community particularly in a borough like Barking and Dagenham, and what I mean by that is when there isn't or historically hasn't been very much in terms of space for the community or kind of group dynamics, it is something that takes time. And also, but that's a really important part of it, because it can also take time for like when Grace was talking at the beginning, Grace spoke about how often, and I was always the same, that quite often if I was going to sort of to be in spaces where I felt like part of that community and sort of really comfortable and open with my sexuality and stuff like that, it would often be out of the borough. And from the conversations we've had, that's a really common experience, that quite often people will travel away from Barking and Dagenham in order to kind of live that aspect of their lives a little bit more. So it's completely natural that it takes time, because people aren't used to those sort of that sort of coexisting, like the location they live in, and that aspect of their lives. But it's really nice to sort of be part of building that where possible, and we, like with the Queer Cabaret, to give so many artists who are members of the community. And also, it wasn't just the artists, we also you know, the people who filmed the Queer Cabaret for us were members of the LGBTQ community. The production company that worked on setting it up and making it look really beautiful also identify as part of the LGBTQ community. So it was really about that kind of the importance of, and that representation running throughout, not just what you see on camera. Yeah, so I just sort of wanted to back up on what Grace was saying about that. Yeah, so as Grace was saying, it's been quite an interesting time to launch a new project, and we've been having conversations with lots of different people, and that's partly been, you know, we've attended some of the steering group sort of with the place with Suzanne, and sort of been parts of some of those conversations. We've also been building relationships with another amazing organisation called Flipside. So where we're building that space for 18 plus, they offer a safe space and a group for younger members of the LGBTQ plus community, so under 18, and they're doing amazing work as well. So it's really nice that actually you are starting to see that there are small pockets of things happening, and the way you can sort of work together, because obviously up until recently with something like Flipside, when those young people reach 18 and they're no longer part of that, the dynamic that they're providing for, they used to just be a bit like, okay, they had to kind of, you know, let it go, and just that's, whereas now there is somewhere that they can point them in the direction of us, and we can kind of continue to build on that over time, hopefully. So yeah, what have we got planned now? So at the moment, what we know for sure is that the Be and Do project is going to be running until June. And that was initially, it was planned to be for a year, but because of stuff that happened, you know, like many things, the beginning was kind of paused a little bit. So we've now got the first half of this year to build on what we've done so far. So that will be continuing those regular monthly social catch-up spaces. And like Grace said, they don't have to have any output. I think initially we were like, oh, but we don't, that the output itself is its existence and just having that space there for people. So just to let you know, our next one of those monthly meetings is happening on the 25th of February. So if you or anyone you know that lives, works, or is involved with Barking and Dagenham in any way, please do let them know about that. And we're always, when it comes to that, yeah, we're just trying to spread the word about those as much as possible. So that's always good. Oh, and I think Grace has very helpfully just put the link in the chat so you can see how to sign up and stuff that's going on. We've also got an event. So because it is LGBTQ plus History Month, we've also got a special version of Spoken Not Stirred is happening tonight, like the one similarly we did for the launch. So as Grace was saying, Spoken Not Stirred is something that Studio 3 do on a monthly basis anyway, but this one is specifically about promoting LGBTQ voices, poets and spoken word artists in that context. So that's tonight at 7:30. So again, if it's something you might be interested in, then, you know, it's something that you can totally come along to if you might be interested. We're also doing, as a bit of a celebration event, We're doing the queer night out, and then in brackets butt in. So the idea is that, again, it's an opportunity for people to experience queer culture through performance, and by performance it's not like particularly highbrow. We've got a bit of everything. We've got some drag, we've got drag kings as well as drag queens, we've got some disco bingo. It's just a really good way, and it's all slightly themed to celebrate LGBTQ History Month. So that's happening on the 27th of February. Again, that's all on the link that Grace has shared. That is, again, so this is one of the events that is open to everyone. So although it is about celebrating the LGBTQ plus community, it's about us outwardly saying to the borough, this is for all of us to come together and celebrate this month. That's really important, because obviously, ideally, we would love to do that in person. You know, we had a lot of plans about getting people together in a group and forming, but things happen and things adjust. So yeah, that's going to be a really fun night. An important part of that as well, I think, is that it's free. So that that event on the 27th is free. So it's free entertainment, but it's about opening up a dialogue and building that in. Beyond this month, Grace and I, as part of the project through Studio 3, have always, as much as we're helping build the community space and a safe space for LGBTQ people in the borough, there was always the idea that we would also do an artistic response within Be and Do, to speak about something for and by the queer community within Barking and Dagenham. So that is something that we're working on at the moment, and we've got lots of ideas that we're kind of pushing on. So you will definitely over the coming sort of few months see aspects of that beginning, and yeah, we're really excited to do something that, again, is just it's about visibility, because that is what's really important. You know, it's about being visible, because, you know, people need to see themselves represented, and also feeling safe to be visible within the borough. So yeah, it's a really exciting time for the project. And yeah, I think, Grace, is there anything you want to? Yeah, I feel like I've spoken a good amount about what we're planning to do.
Definitely. And we also, just to add on, recently the group decided that something that they would be interested in doing is starting a potential like book club.
I forgot one aspect.
Yeah, so that's something actually that we are launching a little bit more tonight at Spoken Not Stirred. Is just that we got a small pot of funding to be able to buy some books and some LGBT books, which is brilliant, because actually sometimes with those kind of book clubs and stuff like that, access to books and stuff like that is usually sometimes the thing that gets in the way. So that's really exciting. So that's going to be coming up, so keep an eye out for that as well. That's really cool. So you can go back and watch the cabaret if you'd like to as well, which you can go back. It's on YouTube, it's on both Studio 3 Arts socials and on the Be and Do socials, which is Facebook and on Instagram. So if you wanted to go back and watch it, there's also a really good DJ set that's from the night. So if you're looking for just a 40-minute set of music, totally go. It's actually really good, and I do put it on sometimes because it's a really good little set of music. So yeah, also any other info to sign up to events and stuff like that, it's all on the Studio 3 Arts website, and you just click on what's on, and then Be and Do is the project you go into, and that's how you find out about us.